Hey there. If you've ever felt painfully alone and isolated in a room full of people, you're going to want to stick around for this episode. I know how defeating it feels to crave and struggle to find meaningful connections and opportunities. I've lost a lot of precious time and peace struggling to connect with others when I should be able to thrive with personal connection. And I cannot wait to share some of the things that I've done to turn this around so that I can experience personal success in this area. Last episode, I shared a short story from my forthcoming book, Stubborn Silence, and narrowed in on the social issue of being welcomed into spaces we belong and finding those tables that we're meant to sit at where we're able to thrive. That episode spun off a mini-series that explores dealing with feeling excluded, rejected, and not accepted while seeking meaningful connection. Today's episode will focus on that awkward sense of feeling alone and disconnected when you're surrounded by others. By the end of this episode, I hope that you'll walk away realizing that you really aren't alone in this struggle and there's hope for you to turn things around. In today's episode, you'll gain some insights into what drives these feelings of isolation and aloneness. You'll hear about my own recent struggles and triumphs in this area, and you'll learn some strategies for carving out meaningful engagement for yourself. Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence but feel stuck in a fog of uncertainty? If you're ready to get clear on your future and plan for personal success, this show is for you. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and life coach. I show women like you how to cut themselves free from worry and self-doubt to confidently fulfill their greatest desires. Ready to restore your inner warrior? Then turn off those distractions and tune in to this next episode. So I want to open today's segment by just admitting that I do know how isolating it can feel to believe that you're the loneliest soul in a room full of people. Believe it or not, feeling like you're alone when you're around a crowd is actually a really common sensation. What if I told you that this feeling is actually an emotional response that's triggered by your social nervous system? That's right. So if you've never heard of social nervous system, it's actually a thing. And it's this deep-rooted reaction from feeling alienated, unseen, unheard, unvalued, and even not understood. I'm sure you can see how this directly connects with our craving for meaningful connection and acceptance. Now, I do want to point out that there might be some other factors at play when you are feeling socially awkward, or you're feeling alone or isolated, or maybe you're feeling frozen, like you don't know what steps to take next. And there might be some social anxiety and maybe even some depression at play here. And this can be the sole cause of this feeling of isolation or feeling of aloneness, or it could just be all these different contributing factors. And I touched on this feeling of being alone and isolated in a room full of people last episode. I opened with my short story, Held Together by a Safety Pin, which illustrates this phenomenon. There's a link to this episode in the show notes below if you want to hear the full story. I also explore this topic in my very first podcast episode, which I'll be bringing in clips from today. A link for this full episode will also be in the show notes below. The loneliness that I want to dissect today is the way we feel disconnected while we're around others. This can be even when we're just one-on-one, or when we're in a group of people, or we're in a much larger area. It's this feeling like others don't see us, they don't hear us, or maybe they're not listening to us, or that our presence feels very insignificant. So how exactly do we navigate these spaces where we feel like we're an insignificant, supporting character rather than the main character in our own experiences? So I want to begin with a word of caution here. We need to be able to discern the signs that others may not be interested in meaningful connection with us. So as sad as it is, sometimes we crave deeper connection with someone and they don't necessarily reciprocate this. So I've been in a few conversations recently where this has come up. It's a lot of work to establish these meaningful connections. And yes, that's true. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of little nuanced steps that are in there. But sometimes you can be trying to push to carve out a meaningful connection with someone or relationship, and it gets thwarted or it gets like pushed to the side, and then that person's like, oh, it's not personal. And maybe in some instances it isn't personal, but we have to be able to discern if maybe we're trying to put energy into cultivating a relationship with someone who doesn't reciprocate those feelings and those desires, because that's never going to lead us to this ultimate place of deep, meaningful connection with another person if it's going to be one-sided. So I just kind of wanted to emphasize that as we're stepping into this conversation. So I want to break this down a little bit more. My first strategy for carving out meaningful engagement is to seek out one-on-one interactions. And I'm going to share a little clip with you from my very first episode in the Restore Your Inner Warrior show. So here's a little clip from that very first episode that explains what this one-on-one interaction could look like.
To get back to that fear of rejection in social settings, I know I made you squirm a little and then I kind of steered off a little. In order to improve your chances of receiving acceptance in social settings, we must face our fear from a new perspective. Once we get that new angle, then we have a really good chance that we'll succeed because we'll see things from a different way. We'll approach them from a different way. And, I know it's a lot more difficult. These social settings are more difficult for you because you grew up in a social media environment. So you spend more time in social interactions behind a screen than you do in face-to-face settings. And I know COVID kind of affected all of us that same way, where we were kind of like, okay, I can't lose my connection to the world. So we literally had this digital wire connecting us to everyone. And some people just didn't come back out into the face-to-face setting. But there's nothing like being face-to-face with people. We need to be face-to-face with people. And we need to see body language and experience. There's nothing like when you smile and someone reciprocates that smile, where you see it in their eyes, or you say something meaningful. And even though that person is being silent and listening, you see in their eyes that it touched them, or you see in their eyes that it resonated, or they're shaking, they're nodding their head, right? Like, yes, yes, or no way, that doesn't apply to me. And you get all that body language that actually is a meaningful connection with people. And we rob ourselves of that by strictly limiting ourselves to only being like, oh, I'm only going to comment, I'm only going to post. And we cut that whole thing out. And maybe it's like, maybe you don't know any better, or maybe you're like, but it's safer. These are the safe spaces. I can delete a comment if I don't like it. I can rewrite my comment 10 times until I get it right. But think about that. That goes back to the people pleasing and the idea of I have to get it perfect in order to be accepted or not rejected. And that just keeps you trapped in that vicious cycle again. And so here's the other thing. Sometimes you will get rejected. Like, the fear is valid because sometimes it happens. And here's the thing though, if you don't get accepted the first try the experiment again. Think of it like a social experiment. Like, okay, I tried it, because a single rejection or a single failure in anything is not how we assess and judge the whole thing. We can't say, okay, that's a logical fallacy to build our logic and our case and our judgment around this one isolated instance to say, well, because it happened this one time, it's always going to happen. That's flawed logic. And so we can't build a healthy internal space. We can't build healthy behaviors if we are allowing the fear and the anxiety, like, oh, right, that was awful. I know it feels awful when it doesn't go as planned, and when you don't get accepted or received the way that you wanted to be received, or you deserve in some instances to be respected and received and everything. But it's literally go again, because here's the thing, you're going to have more success than you're not. 19 out of 20 times, I usually have a great experience. And for you math people, that's 95% of the time. I have a 95% success rate. And so it seems counterintuitive to get stuck and to let the 5% of those instances have me operate in such fear that I'm paralyzed and not able to actually take the steps forward to literally do the thing that I really want, which is to have meaningful connections with people and to be accepted in different communities and different situations, different settings, different discourse communities that I enter into. Here's something that I do. Okay. So when I go places, I don't care if it's a family function or a friend gathering or a completely foreign place that I've never been before, or if it's after church in a service, I literally scan the room for my people. And when I mean my people, I don't mean like, oh, the people who are like, oh, hey, although it's always nice to see them too. But I'm an introvert. So I look for other introverts. And they're kind of easy to spot usually because they're off awkwardly, standing off in the sidelines, in the shadow, in the corner somewhere. It's literally in like, I don't know how to start a conversation with someone. I'm just going to stand here until someone else starts a conversation with me. And I find my people because I know how that is to be paralyzed with fear in the corner because I don't know how to take the first step, or I'm afraid. I know how. I'm afraid to take the first step because I'm so afraid of the rejection that happens. But again, if we do it enough times and we do it enough times, we learn that we're not always going to get rejected. We're actually going to receive exactly what we wanted in different forms over and over and over again when we put ourselves out there. And I'm not just talking about like if you, like where you're meeting someone and you're like, okay, we're going to become best friends, which I know living in a post-COVID era, I hear everybody saying that to me. What happened to having best friends? What happened to having close friends, being close? And I don't know, there's a brokenness in our whole culture right now. And I feel it. I feel like a lack of closeness to people. I feel like it's just this, people are just shut off, and it's awful. It feels awful to see other people that way that you know and you care about, and it certainly feels awful to go through that. That is a form of kind of rejection and feeling abandoned, and like, you know, that aloneness where you're like, where is everybody? Where's all the love? That's one type of interaction, and that's one type of relationship. But what I've learned when I keep doing this thing where I go different places, and I have, notice I'm saying I have a game plan. Like I treat it like a social experiment. I try to make it fun for myself, but I literally have a game plan. It's the strategy is I know going ahead, I am going to look for people. Or if I get somewhere and I'm like, oh, awkward, there are no other introverts that I can see. And if I do that distraction thing where I check my notifications on my phone really quick while I've got one eye kind of still scanning and waiting, and I do those things, but I have a strategy and I have a plan. And I envision how that plan is going to play out. So I'm manifesting that it's going to go well. I'm going to meet someone. And here's the thing. If you're an introvert like I am, even I'm not entirely introverted. I'm like 60-40. I'm 60% introverted, 40% extroverted. But I lean more toward the introvert side in that social settings drain me from all of my energy. And I also do better with that one-on-one or very small groups of people. And so I didn't know that when I was younger. And I learned that, you know, as an adult. And wow, what an eye-opening thing to learn about. Oh my gosh, I do so much better one-on-one. No wonder, you know, no wonder I was going into all of these social settings and feeling that rejection because I don't navigate spaces the same way as other people. My husband's an extrovert. He is almost like 90% extrovert, 10% introvert. And he draws his attention from being in the center of big groups. And I'm sorry, he draws his attention. He does that too. He draws his energy. He gets energized. There's that, you know, that excitement that comes out of it. And he's not, you know, he doesn't deal with the same sense of intimidation and the feelings of rejection, because when you're out there, you put yourself out there in bigger settings. It's like fishing, right? If you throw the nets into where all the fish are, you're probably going to catch a bunch of fish. Whereas if you're over here just fishing for one, it's a little harder. The odds are not as much in your favor, but it goes better. And so when I discover that I do really well one-on-one or in really small groups, which I started out just one-on-one, and I read that somewhere in a book about the different personality types. And it was like total brain blowing, where it was like, what? Like, that's a thing? And then I started exercising it, and I started trying it out, like my social experiment. And I go, okay, I'm just going to talk to one person. And the really cool thing is, I mean, you could be shy to the point of like, you can't open your mouth. Don't mistake being an introvert for being shy, although there are a lot of shy introverts. Being introverted does not mean that you're necessarily shy or that you don't want to talk to people. It just often means that you don't know how to initiate. Again, because look at how the energy works. You draw your energy from the isolation, from being isolated. So when you start to talk to another introvert and you just start to ask them very meaningful questions, most of the time they're excited to talk about themselves, and they're excited to talk about the things that they love and that they desire and their passions and the things that they're trying to do and accomplish in life, or maybe the things that they have accomplished and their successes. And you can keep a person talking, and sometimes they're even excited to hear about your stuff too. And that can go both ways. But I can tell you that I don't care how the interaction goes, when I start to have these really great conversations with someone, they're always giving me what I craved, which was being accepted, which was not being rejected in this social setting, because it takes forever. An hour feels like forever in a social setting when you are just feeling rejected, like nobody wants to talk to you, nobody cares if you're here, and that's awful. It's hard to get. An hour can feel like 5 hours, or it can feel like 10 minutes. I've got to admit, when I was first trying this out, I didn't do as well when more people joined, but the more I did it, the more comfortable I got at, like, okay, I can actually do really well and feel very accepted and not struggle with those fears of anxiety and those fears of, oh my God, I'm going to be rejected. Oh my God, they're judging me. I didn't have to deal with those as much. As I just kept doing it, it was like a muscle. It kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
My second trick is to look for those meaningful people. And at a very basic level, what I mean by this is I sought out people that I've meaningfully connected with in the past or have had deeply rooted relationships with. So when you enter in these spaces, you're seeking out those people. Doesn't mean maybe you're just flying right to them. We have to be courteous also if we're in a space where there are others, of greeting people and saying hi and making some of that small talk. But I mean when you're really like sitting down and really sinking in, that you're finding these people that are there to also have meaningful interactions as well. So they're meaning makers. So in the last 2 weekends, I have had to attend 7 different events. So I've had all of these opportunities to be in different group sizes and different settings to practice some of this social engagement. And like you, I crave meaningful interactions. So I'm looking for those opportunities. Sometimes they're more painful than others, in trying to connect with others and enjoying the time that I'm at these different functions. And so as I practiced this, running through this mad dash of different events, I did have some refreshing results. So while not every single interaction was this magical moment, I did have a lot of highlights and a lot of really great exchanges. And I had a lot of different interactions that were very fulfilling. So some of these different engagements were filled with people that I've known for decades and go way back with. And a couple of them were a mix of brand new faces and maybe some longer standing acquaintances and maybe even relationships. And in every one of these instances, I did initially feel alone. And as I reflected back on how I wanted to talk about this today, one of the first things that struck me as ironic was how I had gone to all of these different events alone to begin with. So that was ultimately the vibe that all of these events started out on for me. Here's where perspective needs to be checked, though. So there will be those instances that seem like others are disinterested in engaging much. And these are those times that we're going to need to use that discernment that I was mentioning and perhaps use an early exit strategy. So the thing about social events is that they're places where we're encouraged and expected to navigate multiple interactions over the course of the event. So we're supposed to move around. We're not supposed to stick with one individual or one small group. We're expected to kind of navigate if the socializing is the thing that's happening at that time. And this also applies to personal connection outside of these events. When maybe you're in a small group or even a small group of individuals that you're interacting with, or even one-on-one exchanges. Let people show you how engaged they are. So in my short story, I illustrate this with the body language and the attention spans of those involved. So really briefly in the story, I just point out how 2 individuals might be talking to each other and one individual is scanning the room over the other person's shoulder, kind of watching who else is coming in, what better opportunities are coming around. And they're in all of these different ways, just not giving the other person their attention, not even half of it. They're just kind of going along with it, just biding their time until they can get the heck out of there. Or there's the person who's on their device, on their phone, and just totally disengaged or going back and forth and seeming to have a better interaction with whoever it is, the mystery person on the other side of their cell phone, as opposed to anything meaningful happening between them and the person in front of them. So I found myself utilizing my 2 meaning-making strategies during these events, and here's what I noticed. So I noticed 3 things. The first is that there were certainly moments I experienced a disconnection. There was no way around this. Some people couldn't or wouldn't engage with me, and I just had to move on. And, I want to say also, when I'm talking about some of the negative experiences that we have, give yourself permission to deal with those negative feelings that you have and to grieve it, and then try to find some type of closure within your own internal space and emotions. You might not get the closure with that person. We can't go around demanding everybody validate our feelings or say they're sorry for certain things. And we just might find ourselves still feeling awful about something, and we need to make that peace. In order to make that peace, there are steps that we need to take. We need to bring it into that meditation. We maybe need to pray about it, share it with other individuals, and certainly bring that closure. Sometimes I journal about it, and then I meditate and pray on it, and I'm able to really wrap my head around what those emotions are and how to move past them so that I don't kind of have like a chip on my shoulder or resentment toward that other person, especially if I know I'm going to keep running into these individuals. And then I take note that those aren't my meaningful engagements. When I do re-enter spaces where these individuals are, I make sure that I'm not really trying to keep meaningfully engaged with someone who's already made it clear to me that they don't want to engage. And I also hopefully by the time I have to interact in spaces and share spaces with these individuals, I have a peace and a better understanding, and I've moved through those emotions so that I can bring my best self forward in those instances so it doesn't ruin my whole mood either. That's really something to consider. So the second thing that I noticed is things usually shifted when I did seek those one-on-one interactions. And then I started conversations by just asking one simple, meaningful question. You don't have to be like super complex, but I'm not the type of person who makes small talk. I don't ask the generic questions that are like safe, that people just say like another safe response that they didn't even really think out. It's just like the template default things that we say to people. And by just tweaking that little bit and just twisting these maybe conversation opener questions, I get people really excited about talking about what's going on in their lives and really excited about talking about just things that they're interested in. And so that is something that I really rely on when I'm engaging in all different types of conversations. And it's not like this fake kind of thing either. I'm genuinely interested in what other people are doing in their lives, and I'm certainly interested in what other people are passionate about, and who knows where that's going to lead the conversation and how we're going to personally connect and what areas I'm going to also feel that passion gravitating toward that person to where now we're trying to, figure out other things that we can engage with in our shared interests and our shared passions. And those things really wouldn't happen if you only had a few minutes with someone and you wasted those few minutes on small talk that was meaningless to them and meaningless to you. So I really find that is a really invaluable way to interact with someone, whether you have 60 seconds with them or you have 60 minutes with them. And the third thing that I noticed is when I had a chance, I did seek out those individuals in the room who I had previously had meaningful engagement with. And you've probably heard me and so many other people out there saying, find your people. But I really mean it. Like, find your people and then hold them so close to you. And every time you get places, go ahead and gravitate toward your people. Like, find your people. And the faster you find your people in a crowd, the more you'll enjoy the entire event. And I also want to say, I'm talking about events here and going and finding your people at events. But when you exchange cards or phone numbers or, hey, what's your Instagram handle or what's your Snap? When you do that at an event, and you really felt like you meaningfully connected with someone, keep reaching out to them. Try to engage beyond that meeting and, see where it leads you. It might lead you somewhere, it might not lead you somewhere, but what does it hurt to try to continue developing and cultivating meaningful interactions with people that you have like interests with? And there's one more interesting thing that came up in one of these interactions. I was talking with a young lady at this writing conference, and she was mentioning her shared struggle of personally connecting with people. And I started asking her questions about, okay, do you exchange your information with other people when you meet them at events? She was like, yes, I do. And I said, do they take your information? And yes, they do. And I said, how many times do you follow up on those leads? Because they're like leads to potential relationships and interactions. And she said, never. And I thought, that is such a missed opportunity. And we all are guilty of doing that. We exchange our information with someone and we really, really enjoyed that connection. And they're the exact person that we would pick to pursue a relationship with. And then we don't follow up on it. Like, it just seems like, why do we do that? So my other advice to you is not only to find the people in the crowd when you get to an event, is continue to find the people when you're home alone in front of your computer or in front of your device. Pull out those cards, pull up the Snapchat or the Instagram handle and reach out to these individuals. Follow them on their social media. See what other events and different places they might be going to hang out. And, don't stalk people. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe, establishing that connection and those relationships, even from a digital space, will give you those opportunities to then see other spaces or opportunities where these individuals and people like them will be congregating, and then going and attending these events and these functions and continuing to build a larger circle of like-minded and interested individuals. So, there are positives to trying to connect with people in the digital space. And this is one great example of how that works, or how that could work to your benefit. So I hope this episode has helped you feel less alone and more equipped to flip that script for your future interactions so you can begin to experience more meaningful engagement. So as you go through your day and week, be encouraged and remember how valuable and worthy you are of deep, meaningful connection. I see you, I feel your struggle, and I believe in you.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, consider following my channel and sharing this with friends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. And if you're ready to get clear on your future and plan for your personal success, consider booking a one-on-one coaching call with me. Find more at restoreyourInnerWarrior.org/0 to clear. A link for this is in the show notes below. And as you go through your week, may your empowered spirit, mind, and heart guide you. Catch new episodes every Tuesday. Ciao.